that struck me was a quote I'd seen, supposedly from somebody from Facebook, that the best minds of our generation are thinking about how to make people click on ads. I was thinking, well, why is that? Firstly, is it true? Why is that happening? And is there something we can do to make other areas more attractive for people with great brains to work in? So I was thinking, actually, some of the people here would be brilliant to run this past. So I'm really glad that you guys chipped in.
Awesome, good to be here, mate.
Good to see you. So yeah, so why do you think the best minds tend towards these marketing kind of projects and work currently then, Jonathan?
Oof, I was hoping you'd go to Matt first. That's all right, because I was going to copy and paste. I was going to modify what he said and then make it sound clever, and then I'd make an entire career out of it again.
And I would make it really easy for you to make it cleverer, being so dumb.
I think that's an insult. No, it's not an insult. So I think I can't speak to whether the greatest minds are making people thinking more about how people click on stuff, because I've met loads of great minds that aren't. I think that, but it does beg the question. It would be remiss of us not to actually dig deeper into the question. I use something called 4 Uns, and my 4 Uns are. I'm often asked now on virtual stages, not on physical stages, similar questions about why, if people have so much capability, why do they not do very much, or you know, and all this kind of stuff. And so I say it's the 4 Uns. The 4 Uns, in my opinion, are these in no particular order. The first is that actually people who have capability, cognitive, emotive, physical, spiritual, whatever capability, could be unaware of what's possible. They could be unaware of the potential that they have, and unaware of the potentials that could be addressed. The second is that they could be uninterested. So they could be literally not giving a shit about what the potentials are and what solutions are. If they're not unaware, they could be unaware and uninterested of becoming aware, of course. I think the third is probably that they are uncertain of what to do next, or which project to catch onto, or what the prioritization should be. And people could be uncertain and uninterested. So you've got the kind of unaware, uninterested, uncertain. But the fourth one, I've added over the most recent 6 to 12 months, which is that they're unknown. So actually there are plenty of great minds that are doing brilliant work. It's just that they're unknown to people. And so I wonder whether or not those 4 Uns, and just to repeat, because Prashant's just joined, that one of the ways that I viewed this is that people are unaware of what's possible with their cognitive or emotive capability. People are uninterested in what they could do. People are uncertain about what they could do, what they should be doing, and what prioritization they have in their life. Or alternatively, they're unknown. Those people are actually unknown, and the projects are unknown, and we don't realize that they're actually going on. It's just they're not known. So that's my take, the 4 Uns. What do you think, Matt?
Nice. Well, this might surprise you. I think that as much as I would agree that yes, there is plenty of amazing stuff going on, and it isn't all great minds aren't all just hell bent on ad clicks. However, I think it appears that way because the economic model, as it stands, sort of demands that in the background, because regardless, my take on this is that regardless of what change you would like to see, regardless of what amazing ideas you may have, or anything that you might be interested in any kind of change, if it isn't the first question, it's probably within the first 3 questions. How much is it going to cost? And because of that, I think that stifles so much opportunity for growth and change, because you've got to negotiate that first. It is so inbuilt into everything at the moment that it's a consideration in even with the most amazing ideas that are out there, that you've still got to negotiate. How do we afford it? How is it sustainable? How, can I progress with this and still pay my bills? How do I do it? You can't get away from it at the moment. And I think that if some of these great minds were focusing on how can we reinvent money, we don't have to totally destroy it, but how can we turn it round to enable this change and to feed it, rather than it to be probably the biggest barrier to it.
Well, that's interesting, because it's something I came across today about the kind of academic model that we have nowadays has also kind of been shoved into that route of being part of the economic model, and so it demands more students doing various things, including more things that could have originally been done as apprenticeships or whatever it might be, for more vocational education. And I'm wondering if that's an area that might have caused an issue for academia not being able to delve into the study of and great minds to the study of things that might actually help the benefit of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Is Prashant joined us, has he?
He has now, yeah. Prashant, what's your initial take on this this quote of the best minds of our generation are thinking about how to make people click ads?
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't call myself one of the best minds of our generation. I'm probably one of the pretenders. I'm one of the great pretenders to that title. But anyway, I sort of had a similar. To get to the underlying subject of the lack of fulfillment, I just finished a job that involved content creation. Now, when I went to uni, I trained as a journalist. Before that, I got a degree in English literature. Bright writing future ahead of me. I'd be writing articles of some sort, even if it was just for a trade publication. But even those opportunities seem to be fading away. And, essentially you're writing, you end up writing marketing content for e-commerce websites and doing something that's completely below what your, highest, what your fulfillment standards are. Your standards are for fulfillment. It becomes a 9-to-5 job. There's no sense that this is going to lead anywhere, or any of that sort of thing. So I think, it seems that a lot more, I think professional avenues of fulfillment are narrowing down, a sort of window. I think we have this unfortunate situation where if you really want fulfillment in your day job, you have to go for some sort of super specialization. And I think there's something a little fundamentally unfair about that. Or, go live your creative dream. That's the other one, which I'm trying to do as well.
So with the super specialization, is that down to the kind of siloing of thought processes so that we don't have this crossover? It seems like it's more and more that we are getting less crossover, and so therefore less people who are that kind of Renaissance man who can virtually.
Well, practically almost every day job is being turned into what is almost a clerical job. You're basically being reduced to a clerical existence in most professions, and that's the tragedy of the whole thing. I saw one of those BBC documentaries, Lost Land of the Tiger. I don't know if you've seen any. It's got Steve Backshall It's he's the star of the show, and it's about a group of people doing this amazing sort of project where they're trying to set up a corridor, a sort of natural corridor for the tigers of sort of South Asia, and they're trying to center it in Bhutan. So they go up the mountains to sort of explore, how high up do tigers live, so they can probably make, and this would take care of a lot of the political corruption in the neighboring countries, and that's so anyway. But that's an amazing day. That would be an amazing day job to have, something like that with some degree of purpose to it. It's the sense that you're doing something big and important and interesting.
It's funny you mentioned purpose, as that loops back to one of Jonathan's points about uncertainty. Is that uncertainty due to a lack of purpose?
I wonder so. I believe that there is an indirect. It's inversely proportional, the amount of purpose you have versus your level of uncertainty. So the more you are aware of your telos or your telos or your teleology, as the Greeks would have put it, the less uncertain you are, due to the fact that you have a very clear North Star. But I think that's one facet. I think it's multifaceted. There's another facet, which is there is suspicion sometimes of some form of Faustian pact that you accidentally walk into. At the end of Prashant's amazing book, which everyone should read, there is a kind of a scene, if you like. I read the book as if it's a movie, which it should be, and it should by rights be a similar size movie as Inception or something. At the end, there's a kind of the embassy. There's an embassy and ambassador and embassy staff who I see in my head as having an evil secondary agenda that are promising luxury, but are actually forcing a trade of your freedom. Now, Prashant, I have never discussed this with you, but we're talking deep in, like, page flipping 300 and something of your book, which I've read twice.
Thank you. Wow, that's amazing.
It is excellent. It is absolutely excellent. I'm wondering whether part of the uncertainty of great minds doing great things is that they are suspicious that they're actually walking into something that has a secondary agenda. And as a selfish question, is that the position of the embassy at the end of your book?
Of the embassy, now which character are you talking about?
Arcades' agreement that that there'll be a movement towards a luxurious lifestyle, that the embassy staff then say, remember, you can't tell anyone about this.
Yeah, I think there's an element of selfishness in there. So, like, it's a sort of, basically, yeah, definitely a Faustian sort of Faustian pact. I think the fact that ultimately the system wears you down and beats you down to such an extent that when the ideal life you've dreamed of shows up, and even if it's being offered by the devil, you feel tempted to take it.
Yeah, and in fact, the reason I was raising that is because I was suspecting that would be a beautiful circuitous loop back to Matt's point, and so with a capitalist infrastructure that plays very well for our human drivers of fear and greed, one would imagine that there is that everyone and everything does have a price, and if the people with the greatest wallets are hiring the greatest minds to do things that drive greater clicks, because that drives greater share price, then one could argue that actually, cynicism aside, the best minds should be analyzing how to drive greater clicks on Facebook.
Ooh, contentious.
Yeah.
So I put that steaming heap of shit in the middle of the boardroom table.
Are you meaning to be playing devil's advocate?
I mean, isn't that, we're going to Huxleyan territory almost now, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was hoping.
So do you see that this the end game of this could be a dystopia in that case?
I think we're living inside it. I think
Oh yes, absolutely.
we are wanting desperately to be people that we would hate if we ever met.
Yeah.
We put on 2 pounds in weight and then wish to be skinnier. We put holes in ourselves and cover ourselves with ink to make us look like something that we would actually find repulsive if we saw in the wild.
Yeah.
And we perpetually want for more, despite the fact that we have everything already that we ever needed. And we pillage the land that is the same thing that contains all of the chemicals naturally that we need to keep healthy. So is this not, if you were writing a dystopia, would you not script it exactly like 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I've done.
Well, you have, that's exactly why I mentioned your book.
Oh, thanks. But there's I've got a question for the group. So how would all of you define usefulness in its absolute sense? Because usefulness is used to justify a lot of what's going on, and a lot of we're told the idea of usefulness. But what were like, are a lot of the things that are considered useful really useful?
Matt.
No, probably not. In all honesty, it's we've got very, very confused with needs with wants. It's very easy to, and again, I guess it ties in with the whole messaging behind the particular form of capitalism that we've sort of grown up within. That it's you think things are useful, you think you need them, when 9 times out of 10 you really don't. But we are so caught up in that mindset of I can't possibly live life without a dishwasher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there you would argue that it's useful, but and in some senses it might be, but in terms of the big picture, so much of what we do is really not useful at all.
I'm a fan of Mill and Bentham utilitarianism, classic utilitarianism concepts. I buy into utility in the ratio of happiness. So that the purpose of morality, as utilitarianism would say or suggest, the purpose of morality is to increase the amount of good things that are like pleasure and happiness, decrease the amount of bad things such as pain and suffering.
That's similar. That's similar to Epicureanism in a sense.
It is indeed. It's the sister philosophy to that. Both of which obviously are existentialism. But I think that my view of utility is that there is only pleasure and pain. There is no right or wrong. And what I find valuable is things that are pleasurable, and I find things that are painful unvaluable. Martin, in your I'm not wishing to take over the chair, but I really want to know your thoughts on this, because I've really admired what you're doing with your play frameworks, and it appeals to me because you are, I think, enabling people to tap into their pleasure principle whilst solving problems, rather than kind of getting into the weeds of shit and feeling as if there's no real way out. You're actually tapping, you're getting a dopamine transmitter, which, by the way, cacao is the best natural version of doing ever. Just going to put that out there. You've got sorry, massive promotion for ritualcacao.co.uk. I think that you tap into that, do you not?
Yeah, indeed. And I think what I'm trying to do with that is making that search for meaning also fun, so that people aren't kind of scared off by it. It also levels the playing field, because a lot of the problems I see within organisations are often there because the hierarchical structure doesn't allow the kind of melding of all the brains within the organisation to work together. And so I think using some of these fun techniques, actually people don't realize what they're doing at that particular moment in time when they're all get into a kind of a brainwave set that's all going in the same direction. And you're uncovering more knowledge by having the sum of the knowledge in the room rather than the sum of two people.
You are doing Bentham's principles of happiness. You are, and to Prashant, your point, there's an Epicurean garden here, and it's simple science. It's so simple. It's the reason why cacao works. It's the reason why, if you can tap into those the cannabinoid receptors in your brain. However, whether it's playing with Lego, whether it's playing with Scalextrics, or whether it's doing whatever in your life, there's a beautiful symmetry. And to tie it back to the question in hand, I'm wondering whether or not the projects that could use greater minds, maybe what isn't happening with those projects is that it's tapping into the pleasure principles of the greater minds. So the greater minds, and I mean greater minds not in a hierarchical sense, greater minds could be someone who actually has someone who's got an extraordinarily low academic IQ, but actually has a really good eye for something. By the way, the greatest accountants I've ever met was when I was mentoring in the Birmingham prison with drug dealers who are locked up, who are literally criminals, theoretically stupid and waylaid and misjudged. They turn out to be the best possible financial directors for your company ever. They just so you know. So when I'm in greater minds, I'm being as liberal in that sense. But I'm wondering whether or not the incentives are an issue here. The drivers aren't in place. If you look at drivers for, why people. So Matt, I'd ask you.
Yeah.
You know the Seeds alternative currency platform. You know that's an alternative to how we could run trade. Is there a reason why you wouldn't be crawling all over that left, right, and centre in Telegram?
Yes. And I think mainly because of clarity within there. I'm sort of sitting there trying to get my head around it, and this is very common. I think amongst an awful lot of visionaries that I've ever encountered, that because their mind is racing at a gazillion miles an hour, and you'll probably relate to this yourself, John, but it's very hard sometimes to distill something down, or even decide which bits do we start with, how do we communicate this to a broad spectrum of people and tell a simple enough story and a compelling enough story to get people on board, and at what stage do we start layering on the other bits of complexity. Whereas you deal with a lot of visionaries and they cannot seem to boil it down or sort it out, because they've got such a big vision of where it's going. They try and tell the full narrative in one hit, and it starts to, well, certainly for me, I just get overwhelmed, and then I kind of still latch on to the two key principles for me with something like Seeds was one, that they wanted to make it cooperative and as non-hierarchical as possible, and the other one was even more fundamentally exciting to me. The whole idea is that it is continuously evolving as an idea.
Yes.
That we don't want to create the finished story and then get everybody on board. We're starting with some very exciting key concepts, and we want to tell the story together. We want to have it built within it, the capability to change as our needs change and as new findings turn up. And that would be amazing to then apply to. The reason why I'm so excited about something like that, and the reason why I'm just harping on about the economic model, is that it's because money drives all the other activity. If you had that messaging that people are bought into, you could then echo that in almost anything, in governance, rather than having these sort of 5 years or 4 years of just flip-flopping between one ideology to another, the whole idea would be we want to start evolving again. We probably want to get back in line with nature. And this is an ongoing project, and little parts might change and little parts might evolve, but we're not going to do this flip-flopping thing anymore because it isn't serving us.
Yeah, and I think you've hit a massive nail on the head that I only want to just riff off to pass to you guys, Martin, Martin, the chairperson, and Prashant, the huge point here in how really smart people can massively overcomplicate things so that no one else can actually adopt what it is that they're talking about. And one of my favorite versions of that was I remember watching. I shared a stage with a guy called Wolfram. And Stephen Wolfram, he has invented what the next Google would be, without exaggeration. I mean, he didn't call it that, which is actually the beauty of it all, because everyone else knew when they saw it 8 years ago. It's like he created Wolfram Alpha, and it's a language that and it blew our minds apart. And I remember speaking to him afterwards, and he's so awkward. He's a genius, but he can't communicate the point. And so on stage, he's saying all this scientific stuff. And I could tell that this is like the future of the internet, but there's no communication, there's no context. And I have found that hard as well myself, although now I've whittled it down. So I care about 4 things, and they're on an X and Y axis. I care about life and death, and I care about pleasure and pain, and I'm kind of extrematizing those things. Martin, I'm going to hand back over to you chairing it, but I would love to know whether you have ever disengaged with something due to the fact that really smart people have overcomplicated it to the point of irrelevance.
Oh yes, I think I also think that there are people who purposefully do so as well.
Yes.
I've worked within the web for quite a number of years over the last 2 decades, and search engine marketing is overcomplicated to the nth degree, and I think it's to keep clients locked out really of their own product, and I think that happens an awful lot amongst various different industries, that people are obfuscating as well as just overcomplicating because they don't know how to make something simplified. There's some great people who really do good work at simplifying humongous concepts, but it seems to be like a rarefied art. So I'm kind of the opinion that if I feel that that's the case, I'm not going to waste my time trying to figure all of that out and simplify it enough for myself when I can find pleasure in something else. Because I am exactly applying those principles of it's bringing me pain, so I'm off to find something else.
Yeah, Prashant, in Facebook, Monty Salmi said that she believes that there doesn't need to be widespread action. There can be micro action, small pockets of stuff going on. I'd love to know your take on that, because we've done a lot of these calls, and we tend to have very similar viewpoints. But I'm really now I'm heavily biased towards the individual. What are you doing personally in your life? Forget the big project. Get this, it's like, what are you personally doing? My needle's gone there.
Yeah, funny enough, I was about to sort of raise this point myself. Essentially, can the biggest form of rebellion be an individual decision to pursue happiness? Can that essentially, because if you look at links between things, is the fact that people are allowing themselves other centers of gravity to attract them, or whatever, people are allowing themselves to be drawn to other things that take them away from themselves, which leads to consumption, which leads to other things. You can actually create a whole sort of algorithm of of all these and if individuals decide to ask the question, what makes me happy, that could actually be the start of a meaningful grassroots sort of disruption of
I
what's
agree. I agree.
An interesting thing that I've noted down in preparation for this earlier, that I was thinking about: do we need to define a set of common goals in the way that SDGs have been defined? And now that you said that, I'm wondering if by sparking that question for individuals, could we find a common set of goals?
Should there be a common set of goals? What about a diversity of goals I mean, a bit of syncretism in that sense, a more syncretic sort of environment.
Or both.
Yeah.
Could you have sustainable development goals, which the SDGs, as a unilateral, societal, extra-personal view, and then they have an intrapersonal view, which is an independent source or an independent arbiter of happiness? Are they, Prashant, are these interdependent? Is it possible for these to be non-exclusive?
Oh.
Can you not be individualized and also I'm a
big believer in syncretism. Like I said, all things just shouldn't be forced from I think there needs to be an environment where these things evolve from within and kind of reflect the sort of inner heartfelt needs of everyone around, our heartfelt expression. So, if you common goals are fine, but not at the cost of individual goals. But I think, it's ultimately about preserving the diversity of goals. That, the common goals with it can be a subset of the larger diversity of goals.
Yeah.
I think circling
Matt.
back to the initial question and the whole fact that this apparent obsession with clicks. Yes, in a perfect world, there could be synergy between your own individual efforts to find your purpose and your happiness, and if enough people were aware and could start recognizing commonality, then you might start finding more general goals that would emerge. The trouble is, you've got to wake an awful lot of people up who have been put to sleep by the click culture. A lot of people would really struggle to even know what makes them happy outside of materialism.
Well, Netflix has played a big role in that, actually. The fact that you can you don't even have to go out to the cinema anymore, or to a library anymore. And that's actually been probably the final nail in the coffin I mean, I use Netflix myself, but if you analyze where it's taking us, if you objectively, it is a problematic direction.
Yeah, and we're just getting more and more detached from reality and immersing ourselves in these alternative worlds and getting the importance of stories and storytelling. And it is being monopolized by storytelling within Netflix.
Oh yeah.
And you kind of live vicariously through fiction now. You don't even necessarily get inspired by real people to then think, I love that. I like that path. I'd like to follow that path. You can, there's probably more people just wishing they could be bloody Batman. Do you know what I mean?
And that's the case specifically with some of the stuff that's in the news at the moment. It sounds like it all comes from a Dan Brown novel. So I would say that has a massive part to play in the way people's thinking patterns have got lazy, because they're mapping everything from fiction onto the real world and going with it.
Well, and also outsourcing the sovereignty of their intellect to a search engine and double clicking for an answer to anything in life. Those all of the above.
What happened to the good old days when you related to Raskolnikov or something, that sort of conflict.
Wait, okay, if we're going to go there, what happens to God old days where we would sit in a coffee shop and people would invent Lloyd's Bank?
All
Or
right.
there is the discourse, as all of us on this call have been doing for ages now, with this particular group that's changed from Thought Expansion Network to Balancing Thought and Silence to Think Up to now the Academy of Advanced Thought. This whole conversational dynamic is something, I mean, that's the good old days that I wish for. I mean, Prashant, you and I are living 2,000 years after when we should have.
Oh, for sure. But as you can see, I'm reclining like a Roman.
That's Robbie Williams' next album. Oh no, that's Party Like a Russian. That's it. So, Martin, Chair, Mr. Chair, how would you like to wrap this cluster of?
I think Prashant's already had the punchline there. So I'm quite happy with where we've got to. We may not have found any sort of specific answers to the initial question, but I think we've covered a lot of ground in addressing the environment that's brought around about the question and what we can do about that. So I'm quite satisfied with this discussion as it is, and I'd like to come back to a couple of things in the future, but I'll need to shape some questions around them.
Good. Well, can I throw one into the hat for the future conversation? I would like one of the next conversations for anyone who wants to be part of this video, the next video, to come up with their best example of what they think good could look like, an activity that someone is doing or an organization is doing, and go, you see this, that's actually physically happening. This is the kind of thing that needs to happen. If it weren't for this bit and this bit, or if they could just take this bit and tweak it, then that would actually be a proper thing to get behind. And it can be on an individual level. It could be something that one person has done in their lives. It could be us ourselves, or it could be on a macro level. It could be a technology perspective. It could be a political perspective. And the reason why I think that would be one of the good inclusions for the next video is because, and I'm echoing Matt's now. I mean, I've known Matt for almost all of my life, so it's, I can't not hear this bastard in my ear. But at some stage, Matt goes, and it takes him about 30 minutes before he just goes, just tell me what we're actually going to do about it. Okay, fantastic. Great use of 19-letter words. What are we actually going to do? And so, for the sake of Matt, I would like us to have a video where we come forward with a show and tell of things that people are doing that are actually making a bloody difference, so that the people who are watching can actually think, right, so here's an example, we've spoken about seeds before. I've spoken about seasteading. We've spoken about various different things, but what I'm excited about is to have that type of call where we actually just go, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And us four could be joined, I hope, by anyone who's watching this and thinks, I want to talk about this. And Katie Pybus, a member of the Academy, she's absolutely hell-bent on homeschooling being the solutionized highway of how we can adjust our future minds, our next generations. So I would like her to join. I would like people who believe that they have an angle or they have found an angle, and let's talk about only solutions. I think that would be the next one to put forward.
Cool.
But I'm not sharing. I'm not sharing this. I was sharing, not
you
sharing.
You can share that one then. But yeah, that sounds a really cool exercise to be involved in. And I imagine we could run that once a month for years.
Totally right.
If not forever.
Totally right. What I'd really like is to have a set of interns or psychology students to witness those perpetual conversations of what good looks like, so they can actually model what good looks like, and then we can actually predict what models need to look like to have the most change. If we can actually look at effectiveness of various different things, if we can look at the effectiveness of revolutions and say, right, this is how Che Guevara did what he did. This is what Malcolm X did. This is what Martin Luther King did. This is what John F. Kennedy tried to do before he got his head shot off. These are the things that people have tried to do. What's happened, what hasn't happened. Is gay pride and Extinction Rebellion similar in any way, shape or form other than walking in the streets with flags? Let's actually map this out so we can work out what good really looks like. So that's really what I'd like to do.
I would suggest involving philosophy students as well.
Psychology and philosophy students combined. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, that's good. Thanks for chairing, Martin.
No problem. Thanks for your all your input. It's there's loads of food for thought there with wide-ranging subjects from super specialization, Mill and Bentham, Epicureanism,
Cacao.
Purpose, cacao. Which, I'm going to be looping back to find out that URL again, actually, and obviously Prashant's book as well. So,
what's it called, Prash? What's it called?
It's called A Heap of Broken Images.
Okay.
So I could send you guys all the manuscripts. I've done a few edits since. So.
Have you, Prashant? Have you got? Can you buy it? Can people buy it? Because this is a public video.
Come on, man. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I haven't. I haven't published it. I mean, I'm looking for an agent and a publisher.
Well,
I'm trying to.
What you could do, Prashant, is you can make it into a PDF that I'll put on the Academy of Advanced Thought website behind a paywall, and then you and I can split the money.
Oh, sounds excellent. Absolutely.
Cool.
Sweet. And then all I need to do is make sure that I can get as many clicks as possible to the website.
Yeah. We can do that for us.
Oh, sounds excellent. Yeah. Speaking of which, Matt, about Matt's aversion to 19-letter words, it's a good thing we aren't speaking in German, right? We aren't having this. There'd be a lot of 19-letter words here.
It would be so efficient.
Thank heavens. Thank heavens. No cultural stereotypes, Mr. Payne. Thank heavens for small mercies and for all the Germans in the world. Namaste. Good. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Watch Lost Land of the Tiger. Nice one.
Cheers.
All right.
Thanks very much.
See you soon, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah.